Hi guys, my name's Lauren Crum. I'm going to be presenting my final AP Literature project on dying alone and lonely dying. Basically my question, I developed my topic after reading Cormac McCarthy's novel, The Road, as one of my independent reading books. It sparked a lot of curiosity in me, and my big question was, obviously no one comes back to tell us what dying alone is like, so what is it that encourages us to give it its bad perception and such a negative outlook? What do we base our thoughts on, pretty much, if no one has told us firsthand what it is like to actually experience it? So I pretty much got about all of my information from one article. It was a very lengthy, very rich article, and it was by two women, Holly Nelson Becker, who has her PhD and has explored spirituality and end of life in depth, and then Christina Victor, who is professor of gerontology and public health and has published many articles on loneliness in the elderly, and they're both from Brunel University. I just thought it was necessary to have a little background on who is feeding all this information to us and what kind of degree they have, and what background information they might have that we don't when thinking about this kind of thing. So, dying alone versus lonely dying is the big thing I want to hit on first. It is two different things. So, everyone technically dies alone unless there is a mass extinction, like what happened in The Road. But a good analogy I found was loneliness versus living alone. They're two very different things. Living alone does not necessarily imply that you're lonely. So the definition given for dying alone, approaching death while living alone or dying where significant others can't be near. So it does not always mean someone feels lonely. And then lonely dying, in contrast, is dying alone when one is afraid of dying alone, especially when the person is actually afraid of death itself. And that is actually the fear of many people, is not dying alone, but lonely dying. So different kinds of alone. I didn't realize they outlined this in the article, and I didn't even think about it until I read it. So there's dying with absolutely no one present, dying with medical staff in a hospital but no significant others, and then dying with people around you who acknowledge your death but don't attempt to help. So those are just three different kinds of alone that they base the article on. So here's my big question now, what I found. What makes lonely dying or dying alone a bad thing? So a big part of the negative perception of lonely dying is solely from the guilt felt by the remaining family members that they failed to fill a social or personally desired role. So simply that they were the guilt from not being there with their family members' final moments of life. And then dying alone is actually viewed to many as a failure by society to acknowledge and provide. And people who die alone are actually imagined to have a disturbed death. And then sense of unease, another source of the sense of unease may come from the assumption that lonely dying represents being socially distanced, which pre-COVID was not a societal norm. Now it kind of is, but pre-COVID it was not at all. And then the media, which I did not realize has such a big impact until I read this article and studied it, and then I was like, wow, yeah, okay. The media actually does play quite a role. So how the media influences. Geographical and social distance at dying actually tends to be pathologized or psychologically abnormal or unhealthy at worst, and then at best it tends to be stigmatized, which described as unworthy or worthy of disgrace or disapproval. Dying away from home on holidays, sudden death from an accident, and murder often reach front pages of newspapers and top headlines. And it's just a constant reminder that is the death we don't want. So the media really does play a big role, but it's also advertised when a person is not found until a long time after they have passed, which is also it's scary to think about. And it obviously links, dying alone and not having anyone miss you enough to come looking for you, which also, must give a really big negative perception to it, and really is a big basis of it, honestly. So yeah, thank you for listening, and that was my final project.